So now we're live. So welcome to this third Voyage efficiency for CII compliance. And this is day 2. Yesterday we had some presentations from Spire and Torm and Amphithite and Nator and from Besovs. And today we're going to continue in that track. So today we will meet representatives from Solvang ASA, from Yara Marine, from SoFar Ocean, from Storm Geo, and from Swire Shipping. And it's all going to be something about CII and voyage efficiency. And while the presenters are presenting, you can ask questions in the Q&A section. And once the presenters are done, then you'll probably get an answer for them. But we will have, after all sessions are done, then we'll have a Q&A session in the end where we have some time to treat some of the questions that might have come during these presentations. So today it's a lot about CII, and we are looking forward to hear what the different presenters have on their mind. And we'll start from a ship owner's perspective. We'll start with Solvang ASA and Thor. And he will please, Thor, present yourself and about the topic that you want to present.
Yeah, good day, everybody. My name is Thor Ask, a fleet director in Solvang. I've been here for quite a number of years. We have been doing measurement of vessel performance already almost 20 years, or at least 15, 16. So we have good statistic of the performance over the years and what new technology can give, and also the challenge with the way the CII are today and what could be done to make it more accurate. So that's what my presentation, and what does it really say, because there is challenges. So first, a few words about Solvang. We are a LPG company running gas carriers with butane, propane, pentane. We have at the moment now 23 vessels afloat, and we are going worldwide. So with our cargo is petrochemical products and also ammonia. So our history is back to 1936, and we are now and with which when the company was formed, but the modern Solvang was made in 1989 with a new owner, so we are a family-owned shipping company. We have been going from running old vessel, buying the second-hand, to building new vessel, and go from a small shipping company to a medium-sized LPG. We started with the program we called Green Tankers, Eco Tankers in 2011, and been working with that concept since then. And it's really about running the vessel as fuel efficient as possible and building them. First building them and then running them. So it's both. And our first Eco LPG carrier was rewarded as the first one, which was this concept is to really look at all parts of the ships and make it as fuel efficient as possible. So we have been building a lot of vessels. All the vessels since 2013 are built according to that concept. We have also put up the history about 2025 and 30 and also 2050, which is our Clipper future. So we have an idea what that should look like. Of course, it is this IMO regulation, which is the background for why we are sitting here today, and the pressure I put on a ship's owner to comply with this regulation. It's 40% by 2030 compared to 2008 and 75% in 2050. But that's only one part of it. We also have the IMO is now working with a well-to-wake concept, and we have all GeoGea grasses included, and we also have the Fit for 55 EU package. So the CII is only one part which we need to deal with, but the rest we are really bombarded with requirement to reduce our GeoGea emissions. It's about CII, but CII is just a measure of the actions we have done to comply, and the CII is a way to measure the fuel efficiency. But it started with a SEEMP plan, which where we are required to have predict the CII rating the 3 next year, and that's a plan which need to be approved by class, and also the ship, the vessel itself own it. And we have the EXE certification, and based on that we get the measurement and end up with a rating which is from A to E. One of the challenges looking beyond 2026, we don't know what the actual requirement will be, because they say 40% reduction compared to 2008, but they cannot really agree of what the emission was in 2008. So at the moment now, this up to 2026, we know. The CII, the EEXI certification is one part of it, and it's done. And the other one is the RAR, which is the total CO2 emission in a year, divided on deadweight and distance sailed. And it's obvious that a vessel in port get a very high, this is a formula which is made for a vessel in sailing, and it's not really fit for the purpose when you are in port. And this is really one of the main challenge with the CII. You need to get a system where you can get from start of sea passage to end of sea passage. Then you can compare vessel, not when you put this all in a yearly part. So and that I will show some really strange result when you do it this way. We have all fuel used and by all consumers, so that's the total. Yeah. Challenge 1 is up to 2026, and we are okay, and I think most of the ships owner will be okay. The question is what after that? It's quite strange that you think that you're just putting in a requirement and the emission will go down. How? It's the action you're putting in which will result it to go down. And in real life, you have only one option. You need to go slower and slower every year. That is the basic in it. You upgrade, and we have done. You gain something, but after that, you really need to go. The requirements tell you to go slower and slower. The short-term action, we are the MRV, the measuring and reporting and verification, have been ongoing for some years, and they give you the data for the CII result from the vessel. The EII certification, I think all ships owners are fighting with this year, where you install limitation on the power and everything to get it below the threshold. And then this SEEMP 3, which was new. And here is a little bit of the mismatch, because you require the vessel to have a plan to stay belong on a certain rating, but most of the action is not controlled by the vessel. It's controlled by the charterer, the operator, and all the others. So you actually putting responsibility to the vessel, which not they. And that is a challenge when you are trying to motivate people to improve. So the really connection, we have a SEEMP Part 3, DCS and CII, and all of this need to work together, and we will get to see CO2 reduction trajectory as we hope for. To motivate the crew on board, we need to tell them where are the IR now. They have made a SEEMP plan, and we need to measure and where are they and what can they control and where do they end up. So we every month we have the vessel performance for speed, consumption, auxiliary engines, and all this, and give them where they are regarding the performance to the baseline where they should have been. After the year have gone, we try to summarize how much have they sailed, how much fuel have they used, how much speed, performance speed of ground, and all this. And we try to say, okay, if you have made a good plan, you get a good character for the plan, even if the SEEMP right you go wrong because it's not your fault. So it's here to get motivate them to do and control the thing what they can do. So to understand the total AR effect, you need to look at steaming, ballast, load, speed, time and port, and all this, because all this is put together and it's the value. So we try to measure and motivate them, but premiate where you have been doing good with this, even if the AR go. You see here as a really special case where you have an AR in 2020 to 18.5 and the next year is 27.7. And that is due to quiet market, lot of the cargo on board, but was a part of the production for the plant. So it was actually a floating storage, and we sail nothing and the AR go sky high. And it's not easy to motivate the crew to do a good job when whatever they do, this is going the wrong way. We also have another vessel. We compare the sail distance, speed, and all this, and try to you see also on this vessel go from C to D, and it's not their fault because they sailed much less. 2021 was a year which was quite quiet for us. Ending up, we have the rating of which is going from, you can see sister vessel, Clipper Venus there in the one end, and Jupiter, a sister vessel. It's only the trade which make these big differences. And there's a lot of, we have one of those vessels, there's an A class, which is belonging here, is going down to D now this year due to the trading pattern and the time and port. So without to sort out this is really not useful when you're comparing vessels. As I said, my conclusion is on a big picture for a big fleet, the RR telling a story going down, you have an improvement in performance. But individual vessel, I was a little bit, that's the story from 2009 telling us it's working. But when you're comparing individual vessel, it's not working because the trading pattern, time and port, cargo handling, and all this is affecting this. So here's my conclusion. Over time, it will tell the story of the fleet, but used on sister vessel, it's a different trading pattern. It is totally useless, and it's demotivating for the crew on board. But it's very simple to correct it. Is to use the time. The formula is made for when you are sailing, and you should use the formula when you are sailing, not and that because you divide on a distance. So, and this is not the part of the correction factor they are dealing with now, but they have to include this in 2026. If not, this is not good at all. That was my view on the result for quite a number of years. We have been doing this. We have actually been doing this since 2009, and we very early quick see that we need to focus on the when you are sailing, because there is actually formulas working.
Thank you very much, Thor. Thank you for this overview. So you are handling with it. You are handling this. So can you do anything about I mean, you have to live with the rating. So when the year is over, you have a rating. Like, is
Yeah,
there anything you can do?
we
Are you
we will
doing something?
we will try. Of course, we to do the monthly feedback, and that we try to keep the performance at the vessel as good as it at the design criteria, and we need to approach IMO to really looking into this, because this is not good at all. And it's not only us, but we are working with other shipping company and also in Norway, and everybody see one of the main problems now is you cannot use a formula which is made for a vessel which is sailing, which is actually up when a vessel is spending half of the year in port and doing other operations. So our plan is we are already discussing in the Norwegian Ships Owner Association, and we need to approach IMO with this, because this is a main thing to get this to actually work.
So you want to separate the idling time from the sailing time?
Yeah, because the idling time don't tell anything about the vessel. It's telling about something about the operation of the vessel, and the interaction. They are a part of the production plant. They are a storage. They are a part of a pipeline of a supply, and the time in port should belong to the port and not to the vessel, because they cannot control it. So the emission in port should belong to the port. Then CII will really tell about the efficiency of the vessel with the formula we use.
Okay. So in the vessels that you have and in the trade that you have, so do you use any of these reduction factors? I mean, you're
No.
probably cooling cargo on.
That's not in place yet, but we should use it when we can. We are allowed to do that, because we also have a lot of cooling. But that is not so challenging. We know that is in progress, and we compare your ethylene vessel with a propan vessel, you get a big difference, and that is. But I think that is actually a part of what we see now. IMO is looking at as a correction factor. So I think that will be handled, but they need to get this time and port separate and all there. It's what we are reporting. So it's should not be a challenge, but it is when you try to motivate the crew to do a good job, to keep their the whole approach is to the crew, and it's nothing they can do with it. So it's difficult, and that is the feedback to us. We cannot do anything. It's not we are not. So of course, a good cooperation with the charterer is also, of course, extremely important. But that is in a way another story. That is possible, but we are a part of a big system, and we are only chained in that, and we control what we control, and not other thing.
Yeah, because you could say that since you are a part of a chain, you're the only one in the chain that has that has a measure where you should act on, right? So maybe it's a bit unfair. Okay, if you stay tuned for to the end here, Thor, then we can discuss it a bit more. We'll say thank you to you for your presentation, very interesting, and we'll go to the next one. So that's from Yara Marine, and that's Michael Laurin. Michael, can you say a little bit about yourself and your presentation? Please go ahead.
Absolutely. I hope you can hear me. Hi, I'm Michael Laurin from Yara Marine. I'm head of vessel optimization here. And to give you a very brief background of who Yara Marine is, this is a company that enables green shipping. So we have a couple of different products. We do scrubbers, we do planning software, we do measurement and control software for the Voyage. We work with sails, we work with shore power solutions, and we do a bit of conversions, upgrades, and service as well. We are owned by Yara International, which is the big fertilizer company based in Norway and worldwide. Personally, I've been with the company for 4 years, and before that, I was on the ship owner side. So I have a little bit of a dual perspective from the supplier side and the ship owning side as well. I'm going to talk a bit about route optimization. And first question is, what is it? Well, it's in the name. It's trying to determine the most efficient route. But we also see that it's also, in our view, how to execute the voyage. One is the thing to plan it, but you also need to go full circle. And that's what I'm going to get into a little bit. And I borrowed a bit from DNV here, where they measure how big savings you can find in different parts of the sort of shipping operations and technology. And the reason I show this is to show that actually optimizing the operation can give you fairly big savings. And I fully agree with Tor Øyvind regarding CII, that it's very much in the hands of the charterers. But I also believe that the ship operator owner can do quite a bit to become more competitive or do their part of getting a good CII rating. And I hope we can get the figures to be relevant as well. So it's not only depending on how much you stay in port. So you can do a lot on the operation, and you can do a lot by planning your voyage right. That's where you start. You start with trying to figure out, how do we perform the voyage as efficiently as possible? Then you execute it, the voyage, and then you actually usually have a part where you follow up and see what you can learn. You do your reporting, and the trick is to then utilize that information for the next voyage. So you do keep improving in a continuous circle, continuous improvement. Looking a little bit at the first part, the voyage planning. If you're going from A to B with a vessel, you'll plug it into your ECDIS, you'll get a route, and depending on your level of sophistication, you'll start looking at it and see, is there a better way to do it? Are there weather systems that might affect how you want to do it? Are there currents that could affect it? Are there regulations, echo zones, etc., that might affect what you want to do? And we believe one important part when you look at optimizing your voyage is to first figure out what you want to optimize. Depending on the type of ship, depending on the trade, depending on what you're doing, you might not always want to optimize the same thing. It might be a cost issue, but it could also be operational efficiency. If you're a car carrier, you might have a big issue with roll. So even though the most cost-efficient route might be most cost efficient, it might give you or take you through heavy weather, which you don't want to do. So that is one of the first things to look at, what you want to optimize and why you want to optimize that. So you get to a point where you realize what's the most important parts are to optimize and how to prioritize that. Once you got that, you want to have a look at the constraints. Usually you have this horrible thing called land that's in the way when you're in shipping. So you want to avoid running aground. Safety aspect, of course, first. But then you have, of course, weather. You have port congestion. You have draft issues. You might have heating or cooling of the cargo. That means that going slower might be a good idea until you add the fact that you're actually consuming quite a bit of fuel just cooling or heating the cargo. And of course, one very, very important constraint for most voyages is arriving on time. And if you can play with these constraints, if you can have some flexibility in some of them, that's when you can usually tune your voyage and find a lower cost, a more optimized voyage if you can arrive a little bit later, and so on. And some of these constraints are outside of your control. Usually we can't control the weather, or there's been trials. And some are more or less inside your control. You might not be able to control them, but you might be able to have a bit of flexibility with them. So building up your route plan is also important to realize that it is an iterative process. You will start, the ship will be going from port A to port B. You should have a good idea on when it needs to arrive. And then you start looking into regulations, weather, current, draft, traffic, heating and cooling, if there's a speed regulation one way or the other in a contract, as an example. And in the best of systems, that gives you the plan. But very often you see companies using different systems for this. They might be using one system for the original plan then add weather routing on top of that, and then do a heating plan as an example. And one important thing then is to keep iterating the process. So you get one plan, and that's usually or often not the final plan, but something you need to feed back and see, okay, what happens if I arrive a day later, if that's an option? What happens if I can go faster? What happens if the weather changes? So that's a very important thing, to have a system or a process that allows you to evaluate, can I be flexible on, usually we're talking speed, affects a lot. So can we be flexible on the ETA, and what effects do that give? So in short, voyage planning, prioritize what you want to optimize, what parameters can constrain you, what can you play with, and reiterate. Then one important part is the execution. Here we see very often that you make a good plan, you send that plan to the onboard crew, and they have a lever on the bridge that they control RPM with. The plan does not care about RPM. It cares about consumption, usually cares about speed, and cares about other things. So one important aspect in getting all the way when you have a complex system is to give the crew the tools they need to actually perform the voyage as planned. Now we're coming to the marketing part, where Yara Marine has a system for that. I won't talk too much about that, but I'll be more general and say we believe it's very important to give the crew the tools they need to be able to follow the plans. If that tool works as it should, it also gives feedback to the shore organization, so you can see that the plan is being followed. You can also, during the voyage, reiterate the optimization, reiterate the planning, and see if you need to change the plan as you go along. Because as we all know, weather changes all of the time. So you often need to adapt during the voyage. It might look one way when you start the voyage, and if it's a long voyage, it will change over time. So in short, for voyage execution, make sure you have the tools to implement the planned route and adapt it and recalculate during the voyage. Coming to when the voyage is done, it's done and ready, you can forget about it, right? In our view, no. And I go on about the fact that if you can measure it, you can manage it. If you have horrible meters on board, you have no idea what you're doing, it's very difficult to learn from what's happened. And as an example, many of us have digital watches in one way or the other. And I actually believe that this little thing knows more about me than a lot of ship owners know about their ships, because there is a lot of data you can collect. And the shipping industry, we are digitalizing, we are getting there, and it's really moving fast. But we're sometimes also a little bit behind on data collection. And having data is good if you know what to do with it. And if you have a good big data set as well, you can learn from it. You can enable AI solutions and digital twin solutions. And getting there means that you can actually utilize the data you have to learn and to take the right decision going forward. It will also help you to collect the data. We're talking about CII, that's a reporting thing. So if you have the data collected, reporting is going to be easy because the system can help you do that. Same with MRV, DSE, and so on and so forth, and other reporting you have. So that's also a very efficient way of spending your time. Instead of collecting the data, actually having systems do it for you. And of course, you need to learn. I've spoken with a lot of ship owners, myself in previous life included, that know that different crews run ships in different ways. Being able to measure that, being able to sort of see how different crews react, gives you the tools to be able to talk to them and make sure they operate in similar ways and learn. And then last step, use the data to plan, especially if you can get an AI data model or neural network to analyze the data, you can do a lot more with it. It's still a little bit in its infancy in shipping, but you can actually build fairly complex views that can be used for forecasting and can then see how the ship is performing, this particular ship in a particular weather or other particular conditions. So it gives you a way better forecasting tool. So again, on the post-voyage analysis, things to consider. If you can measure it, you can manage it. Make sure you can measure it. Use the data to simplify reporting and learn from previous trips. And that goes back to voyage planning, where you need to make sure you use the data from previous voyages, preferably in a system where the data is collected and then that specific data is used for the next plan. Again, repeating what I said before, the trick is to make sure you keep moving in this loop. Usually there's a PDCA loop. I skipped the check part here because I think the three main parts are equally important. Last part about this. Oh, and here goes a bit of the advertising as well, since we have solutions that can help the ship owner with these, but there are a lot of good solutions out there which you can use for weather routing, for planning, and so on and so forth. Again, if you can measure it, you can manage it. Now, how do you manage it? One of the key things here is to realize that there are a lot of good tools. There are a lot of fantastic systems, there are a lot of technical solutions, but unless you get the crews and the shore personnel to work with you, I guess you get a culture where you really want to optimize all the parameters, where you understand why you get the tools, how you use them, and what you want to get from the tools, you might not actually get the optimization and the results you want. So I think that's an important thing to note when we're talking about these things, that the trick is to get the crews and the shore organization involved, because that helps quite a bit. To round off a bit, I believe changing the culture now, starting to do things. We have a lot of regulations, CII, EXI, etc., that are pushing ship owners to change. But there are also other reasons to change and to change more, and that is that there are actually quite substantial savings to be had. Efficiency can often be improved quite substantially by getting into it, looking at operations, and of course also technical solutions where you have a fairly short ROI. And that's all I had. So if I haven't seen if there are any questions.
I might have one.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Michael, for the interesting presentation. I was just curious about the fuel up thing. So does it also work for, I mean, you mentioned CPP. What about a fixed pitch propeller? Can you work with fuel up on that?
Absolutely. Most of our installations today are for fixed pitch propellers. And for a CPP, to give a very brief, it actually works with optimizing the pitch propeller and the engine. For a fixed pitch ship, it is a tool for performing what you want to do and collecting the data. So it does a few of the things I've been talking about here. And I think that's one of the things that is very important, to sort of close the loop, to have tools that help you with all steps along the way.
So for fixed pitch, it's like you set a constant power or based on...
Exactly. You can set a constant power, you can set a constant speed, you can set a combination where you set a speed, but if consumption goes above a certain limit, then that's going to be the ceiling. So it's, and the way it can be used with route planning specifically is that if you plan your route with specific consumption, you can know that is what you're going to get. That means the ETA will be whatever the ETA is going to be. But again, if you reiterate your calculations along the way, you can still get to where you need to be. In time.
And then we are trying to work with AI. I find it a bit difficult and tricky with all the parameters that you have to put into it. So how are you supporting AI? And so you said about digital twins and AI. I mean, what is it that so you are supporting a baseline model, or how is it?
First of all, we use it for reporting. We've done a lot. We have a lot of data and we do a lot of filtering, but filtering only takes you this far because it needs to be for a specific condition. The good thing with an AI model is that it can actually see all the correlations. It can see how wind, current, waves, roll, growth, hull growth, and so on, all affect the ship in all different speed consumptions. You can get a very, very good model. It takes time, though, to collect the data and actually have sure the model understands the correlations. Sometimes it draws very strange conclusions in the beginning until it realizes how it sort of all fits together. But then we can utilize that for forecasting the next voyage, because then you have a good model for a specific vessel, and you can utilize that and say, okay, this is what the weather is going to look like. The model will then take that into account and say, good, then you need to run at this engine power, that engine power, and that engine power to get the most optimal routes when it comes, and then it can take into account shallow water effects, weather, and so on and so forth. It's a very interesting tool, actually.
Yes, I find it very interesting and also very tricky to work with.
It is tricky. It's not easy.
Yes. So, do you support training of the crew? Because you mentioned it, and I fully agree with you. If you haven't got the guys who operate the vessel with you in this, then you can put all the systems you want on board. So, do you support anything on the crew side?
Yeah, it's not a business for it, but we believe it's part of our delivery to make sure we support the crew and the shore organization after delivery to make sure they understand how to use the tools, talk with them and see how if they have improvements as well. But it's mainly one thing that I got from being on the ship owning side, where we saw 10% in fuel reduction on one vessel by just having environmental manager on board and teaching the guys how to use the tools they had. So putting the tool on board did nothing. Tool and education did 10% savings. And that's sort of a little bit where I'm coming from.
Great comment. Thank you very much, Michael. If you stay tuned and wait for the Q&A session afterwards, there might be some more questions for you. Thank you very
Absolutely.
much.
Thank you.
We'll go to the next presentation. So this is from So Far Ocean. I have been waiting for this presentation. I'm really interested in what So Far Ocean does. So Ariel, you'll be the next presenter. Can you please say something about So Far and about you?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much, Soren. Really excited to be here. I'm going to jump right here into the presentation. So I'm Ariel. I lead product at So Far Ocean. And for those of you who maybe are a little bit newer to So Far Ocean and what we do, we are an ocean intelligence company based in San Francisco, and we specialize in super accurate weather forecasts. We own and operate the world's largest open ocean sensor network, and we use those forecasts to drive voyage optimization and shoreside decision making. I'll get a little bit more into that later in the presentation, but I wanted to start by talking a little bit about CII, our vantage on that, and how the foundations of managing CII outcomes are the same foundations that drive a best-in-class voyage optimization solution. We're a company founded by scientists, so I would be remiss to have this presentation without lots of charts and graphs and math for you. But to start, I want to lay a little bit of a context here. So maritime shipping industry is responsible for about 3% of total global carbon emissions. And so today that puts us right in between Japan and Italy in terms of annual emissions for our industry. And the IMO predicts that by 2050, we're going to be adding, if we do nothing, between 50 and 250% more emissions into the atmosphere, putting us at between 12 and 17% of global emissions at that stage. But I think there's a lot of exciting developments that are happening, a lot of great research done by the ICCT, and they're estimating that across changes made operationally, improvements made to overall efficiency, and development of new biofuels, zero emission technologies will be able to drive that number down by about 70%. But what we're focused on here so far, really excited about the developments in biofuels, some of these longer term technological improvements, but we're really focused on what the industry can be doing today, can be doing tomorrow. And so we've got our eye on a lot of the operational changes and the efficiency improvements that we can make in day-to-day shoreside decision-making and day-to-day routing operations. So moving along here, and speaking of efficiency, some of the other presenters shared a little bit. We know CII is a metric that characterizes the efficiency of the vessel on the water. And another proxy that we like to think about as it relates to CII is fuel per nautical mile. So, and when we think about fuel per nautical mile, there are a lot of drivers that are going to impact that number. The first, of course, is speed. The faster you sail, the more fuel you're going to burn. Speed is typically dictated by the fixtures that get booked, the CP agreements that are in place. Of course, weather is going to negatively impact speed to maintain the safety of the vessel on the water. And then when there is flexibility in some of the fixtures that get booked, really the cost of time and the cost of fuel should be driving an optimum speed that the vessel sails. So generally, the more expensive fuel is, the more economically efficient it is to sail slower. And the hotter the market is, the larger the TCEs are, the more economically efficient it is to sail faster, with the goal of booking an incremental day of business on the calendar year. So speed's a big driver, of course, for the fuel per nautical mile calculation, and so is efficiency. And here we're referring more to the technical performance of the vessel. So how much fuel is burned at a given level of power operation, and what power levels are required to move the vessel through different weather conditions and achieve a specific speed. And then finally, we've got the weather. We don't often think about the role of weather in driving efficiency, but the reality is that statistically, a voyage that crosses the Indian Ocean in July is going to have a much worse CII score, will burn much more fuel than that same passage in November. So the fixtures you book, the region and the season that you're sailing through are going to affect CII outcomes. And then, of course, even along a given voyage, because of the dynamic nature of weather, there will always be opportunity to sail more fuel efficiently if you're operating in a way that can adequately take advantage of the near-term forecasts. So lots of drivers here to kind of visualize what we're talking about a little bit better. This is a plot that demonstrates the impact of speed on CII, pretty straightforward. So we'll see that as the speed increases, your CII score is expected to get worse. Here we're seeing about a 2-knot difference from 11 to 13, and that speed difference alone is going to drive the vessel from an A score down to a C score. In this example here, we're looking more at the efficiency impact on the vessel. So in blue, we're seeing the vessel's performance and its current state of operations. But in green, what we've plotted is its performance against dry dock state, post-dry dock state. So with recent maintenance, the vessel is going to operate with less resistance on the water. And to achieve an equivalent speed, it can operate at lower power, burn less fuel, and emit less CO2 per nautical mile. And here, of course, is the impact on weather. So again, in blue, we're seeing fair weather performance of the vessel. But of course, that same vessel operating under Beaufort 6 conditions to accomplish the same speed under those conditions is going to consume significantly more fuel, operate at significantly higher power. And of course, we're going to see CII scores here suffer. So great. Now we've got a more thorough overview of all the different drivers that are going to be impacting CII outcomes over the course of the year. But what does this mean for what you should do? How you maximize the data that you have about the vessel, about the market, about the weather? And what does that mean for the decisions that you're making across multiple levels in your organization, different departments, in order to get the best global outcomes from the business, both in terms of economic efficiency and in terms of how you maintain and hit the CII targets that you're setting for yourself over the course of the year. And it's this set of interconnected problems that we set out to help companies solve through Voyage optimization. Our Voyage optimization solution is called Wayfinder. And you'll find in speaking with different Voyage optimization providers, there's a lot of different methodological approaches to this problem. But for us, we operate on one really simple key principle, and that is that the quality of the guidance that you receive from a Voyage optimization solution will be an exact reflection of the quality of inputs that drive that model. So here we're talking specifically about the weather forecasts and the vessel performance models that power that platform. We believe that a Voyage optimization solution that cannot accurately predict how much fuel a vessel is going to burn over the next 24 hours and how fast it will sail can't be giving you great routing advice if it can't predict and estimate those things. If it doesn't know enough about the weather, it doesn't know enough about your vessel to be able to give that to you. And so that's what we focus on, is really building exceptional weather forecasts and data-driven vessel performance models so that those savings opportunities, we can be confident that they can actually be realized by the vessel on the water. So as I mentioned at the top of the presentation, our approach to forecasting is really unique. We own and operate the world's largest ocean sensor network. These yellow buoys here are called spotters. They're about this big. They're about the size of a basketball. They capture data on wind, wave, sea surface temperature, atmospheric pressure, and precipitation. And we've got about 1,200 around the world today. We've got about 600 of them moored along the coasts, and about 600 of them freely drifting around the world's oceans. This picture here on the right is actually of one of the customers of ours. We shipped a whole pallet of spotters to them, and they were able to deploy the sensors along some of their highest value routes to see some of the real-time weather data as they're sailing. But we're able to capture more information about the world's oceans, about the current sea state than anyone else out there. This right here we're looking at on the right, these are actual spotters and drifting patterns over recent months. And we're collecting about 200,000 unique observations every day. And what we do with those observations is use them to improve weather forecasts. So what we do is we work with ECMWF, the best in class forecasting center out there right now. And we monitor the nowcast that we are receiving from ECMWF. We compare that to the real-time observations of our spotter network, and we're able to identify the errors in that nowcast forecast and then propagate out that error reduction over the next 10 days of weather lead time to reduce that error on the forecast. And so what that means is that on a one-day lead time, we're able to greatly reduce the error up to about 40 or 50%. All these papers are available on our website if you want to check them out. And of course, that error reduction over time with forecast uncertainty diminishes, but we're still seeing about a 10% improvement on forecast error, even up to a 5-day lead time by being able to integrate all of this real-time ocean data. So super excited about that and what we're able to do. Again, weather is our passion. Helping companies make better decisions with better data about ocean weather is very core to us and core to our mission. But we also take a really similar high fidelity approach to how we think about vessel performance model development. And so this is a quick schematic on how we go about building vessel performance models. We build a custom model for every vessel that we route on our platform. And it starts as a physics-based model. So we work with customers, we capture data about the hull, geometry, about the propeller. And then we also collect historical noon report data. So we look at about a year or 2 years worth of historical noon reports. We've got data on position, power, fuel consumption, RPM, and realized speed. We co-locate all of that historical data with historical SOFAR weather forecasts. And then we build a model that with a very high degree of accuracy can predict for a given RPM through waves that look like this, winds that look like this, currents that are moving at this direction, this speed, we can predict how much fuel the vessel will burn and how fast it will sail over a next 24-hour period. And we're able to do that at about 2% accuracy on fuel and about a half knot accuracy on speed, which we're really excited about. And all of this is continuously updated. So as the vessel sails, we've built out a noon report ingestion pipeline. We are continuously receiving new data from vessels. We're continuously testing how well our predictions performed, and we're able to calibrate that vessel performance model as it sails to ensure that we're continuously and accurately predicting how the vessel is going to behave. This is really important as well because naturally the vessel's performance will degrade slowly over time. Customers need to understand when they should be taking on maintenance activities to improve performance. But our model will be able to continuously catch and correct for that degradation in the guidance that we deliver. And this here is another type of diagram that we are monitoring obsessively internally, and we also make accessible to our customers so they can monitor the performance of our models as well and have that same transparency that we have into, again, those accurate inputs that are going to power the optimization and the decisions that they make along the water. So all of this comes together, both the weather, the vessel performance models, and the market factors, the constraints, all those different details about the contract being sailed that we have to take into consideration when we deliver guidance. All of that comes together in our delivery of proactive speed and waypoint guidance. So another thing we really find important with Wayfinder is that opportunity is there. Every day, forecasts are changing. And so every single day at noon local time, rather 9 a.m. local time, we'll be delivering to the captain and the crew either a recommendation on a new geometric route the vessel can be sailing to take advantage of weather opportunity, or an updated speed profile that the vessel can sail. And we deliver our speed guidance in terms of RPM. We find that makes it a little bit easier for the captain to set alongside our predictions in terms of the speed and fuel consumption we can expect over that next 24-hour period. But all of this is coming every single day so that vessels can take advantage of all the changing conditions that they're experiencing on the water. So bringing it all back, what does this mean? There's a lot more I want to share, but bringing it back to operationalizing CII and voyage decision-making. I think what's really important is that, the charter decisions that you're making, the maintenance decisions that you're making, the routing decisions that you're making, all of these are CII decisions ultimately. And I think we want the industry to be operating, to be able to make all these decisions with clear eyes. They need to be made on top of a platform that is integrated and understands what's happening with weather, what's happening with vessel performance. How can we integrate changes that are in the market that are going to drive how you arrive at the most economically efficient and emissions efficient outcomes? And so this is something that, we're just encouraging everyone we talk to keep in mind, are all the pieces of the puzzle in place to really help companies and owners make the smartest decisions here out shoreside and on the water. I think for us, what we aim to deliver to you is a way to balance constraints to drive predictable outcomes. Whether you have high flexibility or low flexibility in terms of how you've sailed the contracts that you've booked, you need to be able to understand and anticipate how the behavioral characteristics of your vessel and how the weather are going to drive your voyage outcomes, your ETA, the fuel that you consume along that voyage, the savings that you achieve, and what that CII impact will be. So being able to serve up and help you anticipate how differences in behavior are going to drive your outcomes, that's a really important piece of this puzzle, as is, of course, earning weather-driven upside along the way. So I'll go ahead and stop it there, but I'm happy to answer any questions. Looks like Soren might be frozen. So we've got a question. Are the vessel performance models entirely empirical based on data point observations, or are you using numerical performance prediction models for each vessel? So we put a lot of emphasis in our VPM development. Again, it starts with the physics-based model, but we're putting a lot of emphasis on the data points and the data.
I'm working on it. Yes, but yes.
Yep, I think we have you back.
Thank you very much.
Oh, maybe we don't.
Soren, you are frozen, or the sound is terrible.
Well, we're waiting for Soren to reconnect just to finish answering the question. So we want to be using and looking at the same data that you're looking at internally, which is why we typically rely on noon reports or high frequency data that your organization is operating with. But again, it's important for both of us to have a shared understanding of accuracy using the real data that you're operating with. So we typically rely on that. And we'll also, as part of our service, provide a little bit of reporting when we see inconsistent data get reported through those pipelines. That's something that we facilitate a conversation on, so that we're not calibrating the model if the data we're receiving is suspicious or perhaps has some error in entry. That's not an uncommon state of things. So we do try to rely on the data as best we can, but we'll highlight when we expect there might be a reporting issue at play there.
All right, am I back?
Yes, you're back.
Okay, thank you very much. I had a connection thing. So can I ask about the buoys that you throw out in the water? So 1,200, is that a lot, or is it? I want the double, or how is it? Are you expanding?
Yeah. So we are continuing to grow our grid of buoys. We prioritize repopulating. So our buoys are freely drifting around the world's oceans, and we prioritize repopulating coverage. We monitor coverage across different ocean basins, and then we continuously add spotters as we see perhaps buoys wash up shore. We have a collection program for those. They come back to us. We put them out on the water. And so right now we're really happy with our coverage, like the improvement that we see on top of the forecast with the coverage we have across different basins is, I think we feel really good about it. It's not, you can't add infinite sensors in the buoy and see an infinite improvement on the ocean weather forecasts. But that's something that we monitor really closely and continue to invest in.
All right. And then you are very good on matching the noon reports. Have you tested your match on sensor data or something that's high frequency or something like that?
Yeah, so a number of our customers have made the investment in high frequency data, and that's something that we ingest and consume as well. We found that there has been improvement with the high frequency data reporting, but there's also, I think companies don't necessarily invest enough in some of the training that we talked about earlier in past presentations on how to make sure noon report data is entered correctly. I think when we have customers that have very high quality noon reports, the data is extremely consistent, very reliable, and customers definitely for whom maybe the accuracy of those inputs is, there hasn't been proper training or there hasn't been full thought put into that. And so in using our platform, we don't need to have customers use high frequency data. But again, the quality of those noon reports, I think, is a good investment for any owner to make there.
All right. There was one question also on the Q&A. What models are you using to evaluate the impact due to waves? I mean, when you're doing the fuel estimate, you have a digital model of the vessel, and then you have some weather, and then probably normalize for the weather impact to hit the right consumption, or how do you do it?
Yeah, so with the historical data that we have for the vessel and with the co-located forecasts, we're able to build a model that accurately predicts the vessel's behavior across any combination of sea conditions. So really the robustness of the data that we have on hand is what allows us to make those accurate predictions.
All right. Okay, thank you very much, Ariel. It was a very interesting presentation. If you could look in the Q&A and see if there's anything. And then we'll continue with the next presentation. That's from StormGeo and Michael O'Brien. Please go ahead, Michael, and say something about yourself and your presentation.
Yes, hi. And I was getting some messages from the admin that my video was off. Hopefully that's been resolved. You guys can see me? Okay, good. I will go ahead and share my screen. And yeah, I think I thank everybody for their time and spending learning more about this topic. At StormGeo, we're looking after about 80,000 voyages annually. We are owned by Alfa Laval. Our parent company is obviously a very large industrial player, machinery, all aspects of vessel efficiency, and we're working together to try and mitigate a lot of the risks when it comes to the commercial side of CII, and also on the technical side of CII. And for me, what I'd like to do today is take a slightly different angle and look a bit more at the BIMCO CII clause and how we can focus a bit on mitigating some of the risk that might be associated with that. But I think it is important, like we heard from so far and from Yara, to make sure that the voyage is optimized. And I'd like to just go through a simple journey here, because our focus is really to go beyond compliance with CII and really find true savings in your voyage efficiency. So that journey could look something like this, where you have to make a decision about some route basis, time, fuel, fixed arrival time, and we're looking at a set of metocean data that our data scientists are working through AI and machine learning algorithms to optimize by looking at a variety of different ensemble members for both the GFS model and the ECMWF model. We're looking at ocean currents through the Mercator model, and we have a host of different properties. And once that data is assimilated, it's processed, and we're on any given day, we are processing about 12,000 voyage optimizations. We're running optimizations with each run of the ECMWF model, and those optimizations are highly customized. Like Yara was showing, it's so important to have all those different parameters identified when you're looking to optimize a voyage. And that's something that we take a great deal of care in making sure that those individual, client-specific and vessel-specific parameters are taken into account. And furthermore, what we're looking at in this part of the journey is the implementation of machine learning when it comes to the calculation of the fuel oil consumption curve and speed loss curves. And that data is all working together to provide optimized routes that our team of 150 dedicated professionals around the world are evaluating to enhance and to be available to consult on. So the data, can be presented in an optimized route sent directly to the vessel. But in many cases, what we're doing is we're actually on the phone consulting with captains 24/7 to ensure that there is a clear understanding of what we're trying to present, making sure that the route recommendation and the speed recommendations in certain cases are understood, so we can squeeze out the most in terms of voyage efficiency. Ultimately, all that information kind of feeds into our platform, where it's available to be consumed in any number of different ways for technical, commercial performance. We have a team of people in Singapore and here in Hamburg that are looking at alert services to proactively engage customers on micro adjustments to their procedures or their actual vessel operations to squeeze out every little bit of efficiency out of a vessel. And then that feedback loop kind of goes around. And like I said, what I wanted to do is really take a bit more of a focus on the BIMCO CII clause, because it's really a very important and potentially quite a game-changing contractual agreement that we're going to have to contend with over the coming months and years. And with the BIMCO CII clause, there's a couple of terms I think that we have to be very, very cognizant of and aware of their implications. For example, we have something called the agreed CII, which I would think of that in terms of the charter party the charter party speed. And if you look at the CP attained CII, I would equate that in some ways to what you would call a performance speed for a vessel. There's another important thing, part of the CII clause, which is called the projected attained CII. And that's something that we have a number of ways of looking at, and that I think are important for everybody to understand, because when you look at the entirety or the totality of the BIMCO clause, it really introduces some very interesting potential obstacles to the way that owners and operators have traditionally worked. For example, there's a clause G in the BIMCO clause, which essentially says that if the vessel is exceeding the CP agreed, that the owner is able to step in and essentially take some kind of action to help bring the CP attained below the CP agreed. That's a pretty profound power that clause gives the owner in this particular case. And to complicate things a bit more is that we have explicitly said here that the warranties as to the speed and consumption shall continue to apply to the charter party. But in the event of any such breach, those warranties shall not be relied upon by a charterer to avoid the obligations of dealing with the CII clause. So you can envision a case now where a vessel is underperforming, perhaps over-consuming fuel, and because of that overconsumption, it goes above the agreed CII, causing some kind of a potential interaction where the owner has to step in and take mitigating actions to bring the speed or the CP attained below the CP agreed. So you can see there's a lot of potential complexity in the way that the BIMCO clause can result in some potential conflicts of interest in how the vessel should be operated. So the recommendation I have is that owners and charterers really need to be aware of that they have to have high quality reported data, and it should be in a good sequence as well. And we need to understand the impact of the CP agreed on the CII value. And there really should be tools at your disposal to look at what your CII is now, but what it's going to be in the future, because it's really kind of hinging on how you operate the vessel and ensuring that you're going to remain in that contractual obligation. And the BIMCO clause does explicitly talk about voyage optimization services as being a tool that can help you achieve achieve these savings. So, you know, the likes of Storm Geo, SOFAR, Yara, these are all things that are going to be contributing to the industry, helping the industry comply with CII. So in this journey, what we have to do is, where am I now with my CII, right? That is a key part of this. And if you look at this red line here, I would envision this in this case to represent the CP agreed, right? And then this blue line here is representing your CP attained. So over time, you can see where your vessel is in relation to your CP agreed. And if you're getting close to that point, you know you have to take some kind of mitigating action to really get yourself back into compliance. And this is something I think that is quite important for everyone to be aware of, because not only is the CP CII of importance to the charterer, but the owner has to maintain essentially two sets of data. One where they have the entire CII for the vessel, and then one when they had to charter it out to an individual company, because that individual charter is going to have exclusions and various pieces of time where the CII doesn't get charged to the operator. So it adds a little bit of complexity into how you manage and maintain this information. Another important aspect of this is, where do I need to be? And where do I need to be really relates to the redelivery of the vessel. If I need to redeliver at a particular rating, you're more likely to look at that in terms of grams of CO2 per deadweight ton nautical mile. And in that respect, we have tools that are allowing you to simulate not only the redelivery date, but simulate the end of year or an individual voyage. So let's just say hypothetically, when you enter your profile, your operating profile for your vessel, and you look and see that you're going to be generally operating on a 10-meter draft, and you need to redeliver at 2.39 grams of CO2 per deadweight ton nautical mile, you would then see, okay, I need to operate this vessel at about 11 knots in order to achieve that. And then, you know, what we would recommend is then looking at operating your voyage in a very efficient way for those 11 knots. So those 11 knots are going to conform with a particular fuel oil consumption. And what we like to evaluate is the constant power paradigm for vessel optimization. It's well known that constant power is a clear winner in terms of fuel oil consumption over constant RPM. And the way we achieve that is by identifying what the consumption is, or what the power is at that speed setting, and allowing the RPMs to fluctuate up and down, going with the RPMs going up in fair weather and the RPMs coming down in more adverse conditions as there's more hull resistance. And by doing so, that constant power regime is going to allow you to consume as little fuel as possible on your voyage. And like I said in the beginning, it's really more about going beyond compliance, right? Because the CII regulations are not really designed to look at efficiency. And if I were just to kind of click through here and get a window to come up, I can explain this a bit more. So we have three routes here. We have one that's called an efficient route, one that's called inefficient, and then one that's called very inefficient. And on that northern route that goes up through the Bering Sea, from Vancouver over to Tokyo, you can see generally in the wintertime, it's going to be north of a primary low track. The conditions will generally be following, and you get less adverse ocean currents. If you compare that to these two routes to the south, they tend to be below the primary low track, and more often than not would be exposed to a bit more heavier northwesterly conditions and more adverse ocean current overall. And all three of these, if you look at the right-hand side of that data, have very similar carbon intensities. In fact, this longest route here has the lowest carbon intensity at 16.67 grams of CO2. And that's what we mean by going beyond compliance, because if I was to simply look and say, well, look, I'm achieving a really nice CII, but in this particular case, I really haven't achieved any benefit to the environment. In fact, I've made it much worse. And in this particular case, it would show that we actually released an additional 898 metric tons of CO2 into the atmosphere, or 17% by mass. And yeah, these are the things that we're looking to mitigate. And following me, we have Nishant, who's I would say a bit of a super user in the storm geosystems, and somebody who's very familiar from a ship operator and owner's perspective on how to implement that. So I think looking at it from my perspective on the commercial side, and then allowing somebody like Nishant to go into details about how these tools can be used to really effectively manage your CII and your technical performance are a great value. So yeah, with that, I'd like to stop sharing my screen and ask if there's any questions.
Thank you, Michael, for the presentation. The BIMCO CII clause. Does anyone use it yet, or does anyone sign it? I mean, it's a big it's a big thing. It really goes in and, let's say, splits the responsibility here between owner and charter.
Yeah. I think as Tor mentioned earlier, there's he was looking at it, I believe, from the IMO perspective, specifically how CII is going to be calculated and how long port stays are going to impact your CII. In a similar way, there's a lot of question marks about the BIMCO CII clause. Now, you could see that example that I gave. It's really quite clear that there's a lot of very strong language in there that could potentially give a great deal of power to an owner over a commercial operator, should they begin to exceed that CP agreed. And I've had meetings with customers that have said that, well, what if I have to make a run to the Panama Canal for a booking? All right, am I able to pop above that CP agreed because I need to make that booking, or else I lose a great deal of money? And the answer is, you would have to basically engage in a conversation with the owner and say, hey, I'm going to be temporarily exceeding the CP agreed. Are we okay with that? But here's my plan for getting back underneath it afterwards. So it's a very complex tool, but what we're looking to do here is really simplify that by having a series of dashboards that can make it quite simple to visualize this. And then you could present it to an owner and say, look, I'm going to spike above for a short time here, but I'm very quickly going to come back down. So I think it'll allow those interactions between owners and charterers to go much more smoothly.
Right. So if they have to take mitigating actions to get back on track, I guess you support that in your system, right? So you can simulate different scenarios for them, or what?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you can. The simulators are designed to do that. It's designed to say, well, what if in this particular situation I operate my vessel under these parameters? I operated under this many days at sea, this many days idling, this many days working. What's that going to end up? And if I do that, what speed can I effectively achieve at sea? And those are the important things that are going to help balance the commercial with the obligations to CII.
All right. Thank you very much, Michael. If you please would hang on for a while, and then after the next presentation, there might be some questions. But please have a look in the Q&A if there's anything questions for your presentation. But thank you very much.
Thank you.
And then we go to the last presentation. That's from Swire Shipping, Nishant Diani. Welcome, and please present yourself, and please go on with your presentation.
Thank you, Soren. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone. And if I look a little bit sleepy, it's 10:30 p.m. in Singapore, so please bear with me. My name is Nishant Dhyani. I'm heading fleet efficiency in Swire Bulk and Swire Shipping. And today I'm going to talk about CII. But before starting my main presentation, I want to give you guys a little bit of food for thought. Okay. And this is not related directly to CII, but more with the design index, the EEDI or EEXI, as as we can take both of them at a similar level. So this is about one of the container ship of ours that was delivered in 2021. And according to the IMO's requirement, the required EEDI for this vessel was 16.8 grams CO2 per ton mile. And when we built that vessel, when we carried out the actual tests, the attained EEDI came out to be 10.8 grams CO2 per ton mile. Okay, which effectively it means is that we built a vessel in 2021 which was 37% better than the IMO's requirement for the design index. All right, so now I'm going to leave you guys with two questions. Yeah, one, do you believe IMO's emission targets are too easy? Because in 2021 we are already doing 37% better, right? Or are we doing something to make our ships more efficient? We mean Swire. Yeah, I'm not going to give you answers for that, but just for you to realize that how much potential is there, and so many low-hanging fruits out there if you really know what you're doing. All right, and uh, for the sake of the clarity, I just want to also a little bit tell you about EEDI, EXI, because maybe some people are not from the technical background. So if you would have seen an ad of a car showing best in class fuel efficiency of 27.97 kilometer per liter, and then there is an asterisk there, right? And in that asterisk it's written under the lab conditions or under the test conditions. So you can take EEDI, EXI to be that fuel consumption under standard test conditions. So normally you won't be able to perform at that level because it's in the under test conditions, under certain conditions. But if your vessel's EEDI or EXI is lower, then it is performing at a better level. Simple as that, because it's about emission. So that is about EEDI, EXI. And now I'm going to start my presentation. So this presentation is mostly for the people who do not understand how CII is calculated, how is it measured, why CII is there. So it's so to say, maybe for some people you may seem that you already know about it, but just bear with me on that. It is more for the people who do not understand that how CII comes about, where does it come from, and why CII is there. Okay, so what I'm going to talk about is the CII. What is that? Why CII is there? How the targets of CII can be obtained, when, and then how do you monitor the CII of your vessels? And once you're monitoring the CII, then how are you going to verify those CII values? And if the CII is bad, then what steps do you take to improve the vessel's CII? So that is what I'm going to talk about. So CII wise, it's quite straightforward. It is intense carbon intensity indicator. What does it tell you? It tells you how much of gram CO2 is being emitted when carrying 1 ton of cargo for 1 nautical mile distance. I mean, it's just a pretty simple metric. And the formula as shows annual CO2 emissions divided by the deadweight of the vessels and the distance traveled. How CO2 emission is calculated? Uh, 1 ton of fuel, when you burn, then you emit close to 3.1, 3.2 tons of CO2. So you calculate from 1st of January until 31st of December, how much fuel has been consumed on the ship. That's pretty easy from your known reports, from your logbooks, you can get that value. And then you multiply that with the factor of the fuel that you're going to use. So for example, if you use heavy fuel oil, the emission factor is 3.114. So you calculate how much fuel oil you have burnt and you have consumed on the ship, and then you multiply it with 3.114. It tells you how much carbon dioxide metric tons the vessel has emitted in 1 year. And that value, you change it to grams by multiplying it with 1 million and divided by the dead weight of the vessel, which is a constant, and the distance traveled in that 1 year. I will show you an example also for clarity's sake. The unit is pretty simple here. It is gram CO2 per deadweight ton mile. It is also called AER. Why is it called AER? Because we are talking about the annual values here. And CII is mostly an operational lever. I will come back to that in my presentation later on, but just remember this, that mostly how you operate the vessel will determine the CI of the vessel. Yeah, so it has a technical aspect also, but more of the operational part. So that is what the CII is all about. So let me give you an example here. So we have a bulk carrier, dead weight 50,000 tons, annual fuel consumptions of 10,000 metric tons, uh, annual distance traveled as 60,000 nautical miles. And as I just showed you in the formula, how CI is calculated, 10,000 multiplied by 3.114, which is the emission factor of the fuel oil. And then you multiply it with 1 million to make from tons to grams. That's easy. Then divided by the 50,000 and multiply with the 60,000 nautical miles. So when you do this calculation, you will find out the CII of the vessel, which is the attained value. That means the vessel has attained this CII for a year. All right. Then why is it being implemented? Because IMO has ambitions to cut the carbon emissions from shipping by 70% by 2050 and 40% by 2030. I would also like to tell you that in July, we have a MEPC meeting where these targets will be revised, likely to be revised. And when we revise it, we actually make it more stringent. So it is likely that this 70% will change to 100% in July this year. That is something which we have to see when it happens, but just a heads up to you guys. So this is the reason why CII is there, and the CII targets, which I'm going to talk about, are also variable targets. That means every year the targets become stricter. Why they become stricter? Because if we need to reduce the carbon intensity by 70%. We have to reduce the targets also every year. Okay, so if you want to calculate the CII targets for your vessel, it is also pretty simple. IMO has given the calculation, and depending on the type of ship that you have, you can calculate your targets. So for example, if you look at the bulk carrier section, the A and C values are constant values. The capacity, that means the deadweight of the vessel, is also constant. So you can just put all the values in the above formula there, and you will be able to get a CII target. Okay. And I will show you in an example in my next slide how we can calculate. But please remember that this CII target is based on 2019 reference. All right, and every year that target becomes more stricter. So in 2023, we have to use a factor of 5%. A factor of 5% improvement in this target. So that means whatever target you get in this, you make that target 5% more stricter to get your 2023 target. So for example, if you see here, I talked about the deadweight, a bulk carrier with a deadweight of 50,000 tons, and A and C values are constant according to that table which I showed you just now. You can actually get a target here. 4745 multiplied by 50,000 raised to the power of minus 0.622. So you put in an Excel file, you will get the target. But this target is from 2019. So if you want to know your target for 2023, you just have to subtract 5% from this. So whatever value you get after subtracting 5% from this 5.67, that will be the target of your vessel in 2023. But let us suppose that the target is 5.67. All right. So the target is 5.67, and our attained CII is 10.38, according to the calculations which I showed you just now. What do you think will happen to your CII score? Because the lower CII, the better it is. So obviously, this vessel is going to show very poor performance in CII. That means she will get a rating of E for sure. How A, B, C, D are determined depending on the deviation from the target. How far you are from the target, it determines whether you are going to be A, B, C, D, or E. So if you are just on the target, it will give you a value of C. If you are below the target, then you will get either value of B or A. If you are above that target by some deviation percentage, then you will get value of D and E. How much percentage that deviation is, the band is, it's around 8 to 18%. So if you are plus 8% or minus 8%, you will remain in the same band. And if you are going above and below, then you will get more favorable ratings. IMO has also given that guidance in the circular as well. So you can actually see, depending on the type of vessel you have, that deviation changes. So that's why it's not a fixed deviation. So bulk carrier may have 8 or 18%, container may have 10 and 20%. So that you'll have to see in the table that IMO has provided. All right, so this is about what I told you now about how you can calculate your attained CII, how can you find out your CII targets for the vessel. And once you have done that, then you can actually, it can, and this is a real life slide from our performance management system. We are using StormGeo. So as you can see here, we can get attained ratings of our vessels on the go, and we can monitor our fleet, how the vessels are doing year to date. And you always have to look at year to date. Why? Because as I said, it is the annual efficiency ratio. That means uh, it will start from 1st of January until 31st of December, and then it gets reset. Then the next year comes, and then again it starts from 1st of January to 31st of December. So that's why you always have to look at the attained ratings of your vessel. And what we have also done is, this is the monitoring from our side, but we want to make sure that we also have a verified rating. So what we have done is, we have connected seamlessly to our verifiers, the IMO DCS and EU MRV verifiers, and DNV in this case, and we have a seamless transfer of data from our performance management into DNV. So what happens is that as vessels shares the report with us, the ratings here also get updated directly. So if we want to charter out any vessel, so we have a very quick view of our verified ratings from the DNV platform. So it becomes a little bit easier for us to discuss with the owners or the charters, whatever the case is. This is what we are doing. And once you have the verified ratings, and if the ratings are poor, then we need to know what can we do to improve those ratings. And these are few measures that we can take to improve our ratings. And if you remember, I talked about uh, that CII being an operational lever, and this is the reason why it is an operational lever. If you look at this, most of the measures here are related to the operations of the vessels, barring hull and propeller maintenance. And that's why I said that most are operational decisions. That's why the operations departments uh, are very important stakeholders in these discussions. So how can we improve our CII? It's pretty simple. It's you reduce the speed of the vessel, and that means you are consuming less fuel. That means you have better CII. That is one, but your business must support that, of course. The second one is port stays. Less port stays means more sail distance and better CII. I mean, if you remember that formula, annual CO2 emission divided by the dead weight and the distance traveled. So if you spend more time in port, that means your accumulated distance will be lesser, and then your CII will be poor according to the formula. So that's why you must accumulate more distance in order to get better CII. But again, this is about operations, whether it can be done or not. Uh, the third one is about weather routing services to optimize speed and power, which Mike also talked about. Definitely, it is one of the powerful tools to improve the CII. Hull propeller, this is the technical thing. So making sure that the vessels are maintained correctly, the hull condition of the vessel, you're using the best of the paints. Fouling release paints, we have seen that fouling release paints are coatings are very beneficial to us. um, and we have a regular propeller polishing. We have planned maintenance. In our planned maintenance system, we make sure that we are cleaning our propeller every 6 months, and we are also inspecting our hulls to make sure that every 6 months, to make sure that we don't have fouling on our vessels, which improves or which increases the drag on the vessel and thus the fuel consumption. Uh, then the last one is alternative fuel. If you use a low carbon intensive fuel, then the CI can be better, but that is not a very straightforward solution, because many things need to be considered in this, and not a very straightforward. But yes, as we get more green fuels and alternative fuels, then this could also be one of the alternative, but it's not a very um, it's not a cheaper option. It is quite expensive. And that was my last slide, and this is what I like this Native American proverb, which says, "We do not inherit the earth from our ancestors; we borrow it from our children." I think this is quite apt for these kind of sessions. And thank you very much. And I am done with my presentation. So what I'll do is I will stop presenting it.
Thank you very much, Nishant. Interesting presentation. So you have so yeah, so does it make sense because you mentioned how you can reduce the CI and then you look at port state. So you have some base load where you can minimize that. I mean, does it make sense for you to look at reduction of service consumption, stuff like that, to minimize the effect of the idling time?
Yeah. So, Søren, we have we have two companies. We have Swire Shipping that is operating uh, container ships, the liner service, and we have Swire Bulk. So when we look at the CI of our bulk vessels, bulkers, and compare it with our container ships, we definitely see that bulkers are not performing as good as our container ships. And the reason is because of the port days and the idling time. So it has, as Tor also said before about it, that we have very limited control over that, because if the vessel goes to Brazil, it is it is in anchorage for a month or 1.5 before it can load and unload cargo. I mean, what can you do about it? You cannot do anything about it. Just have to wait and watch. And obviously, and then that has effect on the CI performance. So CI is not, according to me, it's not a perfect metric, but at least it is something where we can start, and then the gaps have to be filled. And I think Tor also mentioned something about this CI not being perfect. Yes, I totally agree. And somewhere we are also to be blamed for this. When I say we means ship owners, operators, and I'll tell you the reason why. Because a few years ago, when this IMO DCS discussion was going on about collecting the data from the ships, it was asked in the meeting in MEPC, one of the MEPC meetings, that can you share the cargo details with us? And that time, everyone unanimously declined. They said, no, it is very serious and we don't want to share and it is a confidential and all that. So then IMO had no choice. IMO said, okay, I have to do something. So what I'll assume is that your ships are going full all the time. So I will use that dead weight. And that's how this AER came in. Otherwise, I think maybe EOI would have been taken if they had those data with them to make the appropriate baselines to calculate the EOI. So I think we also have to be a little bit more pragmatic. If we don't share, then it is not going to work. Even today, I mean, in MEPC meeting, MEPC 80, uh, IMO again is going to discuss about sharing the cargo details. And I don't know whether people will agree or not, because to me, I think if they want to improve, they have to share the data. Yeah. So this is what I think, Soren.
Yes, I think it's a good view. So I could maybe ask all of you why did IMO choose this? Because I think everybody here at this little gathering here has an issue somehow with the CII in some form. But IMO chose it, and is it because I think maybe is or just a question? Do you think it's because they want to force the market to be part of this? Because it's always been on the ship owners' responsibility to be energy efficient and everything, and the market have never really cared about that. The market has said, okay, full speed ahead because you have to get to that cargo. So is it to force the market into this discussion, or is it just because it was easy? I will open it to you. Yes, Tor.
I think there is a point there that for a ship's owner, the dead weight is better because the amount of cargo, if you don't control that, if you're sailing around with a half full vessel, you will be punished very hard. And when this come into legal requirement, I think the RIR with dead weight is safer for the ship's owner when you get the requirement on it, because you cannot at least we cannot control the amount of cargo, and then you will sailing around with half cargo and will be terrible punished and get so I think for a ship's owner, IR or is of the measurement we have, it's okay, it's the best way. We also present EUI because that's better, but that's when you don't control the amount of cargo. It's more, it's worse if they don't fill the vessel with cargo, we are punished. And I think the worst with the IR at the moment now is the time and port need to be extracted away, because then you actually look at the vessel and you need to get compensation for cooling and this sort of thing, and also something about the weather, because as a show here, you can actually sail much longer, emit more emission, and get a better CII. So they are rewarded for so there is something which going the wrong ways there. So it is I think it's okay to get the big picture of the efficiency of a fleet, but single vessel comparing year after year, if you change trade, is useless, and it's can really punish. As we say, we have our vessel which going to D because of the operation, and this is not telling anything about the vessel. It's telling about the port and the way the vessel are used. So I think it's important. All of the owner, charterer, customer, everybody is a part of it. They need to in a way work together to improve this. But also it must be clear that the operation, the emission in port belong to the port. They keep the vessel there, so they should be on their account if we are staying there then more than a normal time. So it needs to be who have the responsibility for the different parts, and we can only be responsible for when we are sailing. And the formula is made for sailing. It's not made for idling. So the whole formula collapses when you're putting zero below the line there. Everybody know then the numbers go sky high. So the formula is not, you cannot be used for when the vessel is not sailing.
Right. Yes, Michael?
Yeah, I definitely agree with Tor. And yeah, I think a lot of these regulations are imperfect, right, when they're implemented, but the goal is noble, I would say. Going back to the implementation of SECA zones and ECA zones, there's a lot of negative or unintended consequences, right? You had vessels that would actually steam a longer distance outside of the ECA zone and then cut into at the last minute, for example, coming from Europe to New York, right along the edge of the ECA, because it was more cost effective. And if you look back 2 years, just-in-time arrivals were actually on the rise. The market got hot, and that went away. The ships would just go, and so we have to realize that there's still an extremely high commercial. You have these two ideologies conflicting with each other: the environment and the commercial aspect. But we have to start somewhere.
Michael, you have a no. The other Michael.
I think Michael actually said more or less what I'm going to say, that shipping has a long history of very, very poor legislation. But after a while, we always get to a point where we adapt to it, or the legislation actually starts fitting the purpose. So I believe what you said, Søren, is that they're really just pushing something through to start putting the pressure on. And I'm hoping that we will gonna eventually get the legislation to actually, and the CII or whatever measurements we have, to fit the purpose and sort of push us to improve instead of pushing us in the wrong direction. So I'm a bit optimistic on that side, but I've seen so much legislation that we just shake your head and say, what were they thinking? And then 3 years later, we actually managed to follow it, or the legislation has adapted to reality.
Yeah.
I just want to, sorry, I just want to add on what Michael said, because legislation is one thing. Now even the customers, the consumers, they are becoming so aware that it is not only about legislation. I mean, I know for sure that there are big charters who are coming to us and are giving us 100 items checklist, and this is all about environment, and it has nothing to do with legislation. And these are the big contracts that we don't want to miss. So the things are actually in sustainability and in ESG practices. It is going beyond legislation, because it is about doing the correct thing, and it is being demanded not only by the shareholders of the company, but also by the consumers and the customers. So if if we have customers, uh, if they know that our ships is polluting, they don't want to transport their cargo on our ships. So it's going beyond legislation, and this is the reason why all the shipping companies are coming and they are setting this carbon zero targets, uh, because this is now becoming part of the business strategy, and it is not in the periphery. Now it is coming to the core, where ESG practices sits in the boardrooms now. People discuss. Earlier, it used to be a standalone item, like it is just there that you have a sustainability report, which nobody reads because it is published once a year. But things are changing rather fast now. This is what I think.
Yeah, I just want to add to that, which is, we have just as many charters as we have owners coming to us asking how we can help them understand more about performance of vessels that they may be thinking about doing business with. So I definitely think what Nishant said, we're seeing that, all across the aisle. It's bigger than the regulation, the change that we're seeing here.
Yes, I think there is a customer demand. Let's see how fast it comes out to the owners and the operators, or even more the charterers. So, but there is movement. We can see that, right? So, and what about now we're discussing all this, and the poor guys on board the vessel. I mean, we are pushing them, aren't we? I mean, they are doing the best they can to sail safely. We ask them to do a lot of stuff. Can we do anything to lighten them up a little bit, or to help get them to help us in improving? Because in the end, it all comes down to the guy who sets the handle on board. And do we do anything to support them, or can we do more?
I definitely think we can. And one part is making sure they're not setting the handle, but they're given the tools they need to simplify their life. I've spoken to a lot of captains who consider themselves to be reporting machines rather than actual sailors. And I think that there are tools to simplify their life and make sure a captain and the other senior officers and so on board can focus on the more important tasks, and also are given time to focus on optimizing what they're doing. So I think there's a lot we can do from the shore side to support them. All of those tools or procedures are definitely not there yet, but I think if you look at the best-in-class ship owners, they're working a lot with their crews and how you can support them.
Is that what you do in Nishan?
Yeah, no, so I agree with Michael. So also, because I think seafarers, somehow they become little easy targets for everyone to go after, and that is the reason. But what I have seen is that if we impart the knowledge to our crew, and then they when they understand it, they actually do a much better job. And this is what I've seen is that, during our seminars, our officer seminar, we present them, we tell them the bigger picture, and then how they are related to this bigger cause. So if you talk about IMO 70% reduction, I mean, for a chief engineer captain, he'll say, what are you talking about? But when you break it down from that 70% reduction into how their ship or how their voyages, how their main engines are related to this, then they are able to connect those dots. So and about the reporting one, Michael, I totally agree with you. There are so many reportings, and it is a shame to me. I think it's a shame. Why? Because they have a charters report, they have owners report, they have multiple reporting systems, and to me this is absolutely not required, because you need to have a one source of truth, and then whoever wants to take the data, then they can take. So if it is going to the charters or to the owners, in this world today, I don't think you can hide anything, because we are going towards that transparent system where we have access to all the details of the vessel. So if the vessel is stopped for even 5 minutes, we will come to know, you know. So there is no reason for anyone to hide it. I think we have to, and we are very obsolete in that sense. We have to go in that direction where we are more transparent, and we are open to sharing the best practices, and I think that's how we can become more better than what we are today.
Just to build on that, I think I would also argue that better tools for shoreside will lead to better experiences for captains. I think a lot of the challenge right now is about how do we take all this data, take all these constraints, understand, anticipate, predict how they will interact with one another, and how that will produce business outcomes, emissions, sustainability outcomes. And often when the back of house is not organized around how we think about balancing all these different factors, that thrash is something the captain has to deal with as directions change, as strategies get pulled together. And so I think that ship-to-shore connection is so important, but also making sure that all the different departments shoreside are on the same page about when and how we're balancing these different levers, I think can go a long way to improving that experience too.
Agree. All right.
Maybe
Any other comments?
Yeah, maybe a quick comment, Soren. I graduated from the New York Maritime Academy eons ago. I think it was 1989, thereabouts. And when I sailed back then, there was zero awareness about what we're talking about here, and then the fact that we have companies like Yara and SOFAR and StormGeo in business suggests that there's an appetite to address this problem. And kind of circling back to something that Nishant had mentioned earlier about the dialogue between owners and operators, I think we're seeing that the regulations are much more prominent in promoting that dialogue and sharing of data. It's always been so restrictive, just kind of holding on to it. And the more that we're able to introduce transparency without kind of delving into information that's going to perhaps impede on competitive advantage, I think is going to be good, right? Because we're going to be in a much better position to be on the same page and achieve the goals we're looking to achieve.
Yes. I agree. Since 1989, a lot happened on the vessels. Life was more simple at that time.
I don't want to tell you some of the things that we did back then. Yeah.
All right, but I want to thank you for coming today, and I want to thank you for sharing all your views on this interesting topic, and also presenting some of your solutions and what you do in the shipping companies. So it's to me at least been very. I learned a lot today. I hope all the viewers also did, and I hope to see you another time in a forum like this. So thank you for coming. I want to thank BS Group for hosting this, and the sponsors, of course, for sponsoring the event so we could have it. So thank you very much to all of you, and you enjoy the rest of your day or evening or wherever you are.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.